Hey guys, my name is Jason with Not Bigger Mining and Metals, and today I wanted to do a comparison between sampling with a gold pan, crushing up a sample and panning it out, versus sampling via assay. And so I got some samples we'll take a look at. We'll crush them all up. I'll mix them together, homogenize them, and then we'll split them up into two sections, one to be panned out and one to be assayed, and we'll compare the results. Here's some of the ore I got, and I was walking around and checking out some of the old dump piles. And I juiced these samples. I broke up a bunch of rocks and took only the best stuff so we could get a good showing of gold, or hopefully we can get a good showing of gold. But here's some more. This is the stuff. And when I go and I sample a dump pile, rather than finding 2 or 3 really big rocks that look really good, I like to go around and get a bunch of the small rocks. And you get a much better representation that way. So it kind of gives you a better idea. And again, this is hand-picked stuff. I wanted to see if there was any values in these dumps at all. And so I'm going to take this initial sample. And if this looks good, then I'm going to go back and probably get a larger bulk sample to run through some of the equipment. But let's start here. I got to get these crushed up, and then we'll run them through our little pulverizer. All right, now I'll show you how I'm breaking this up. I just got to get it small enough to go into the pulverizer. And so I'm just taking it. I'm on a steel table. I've got a cardboard box around me here. And it helps keep the stuff from flying all over the place. And I like to make a little pile and then crush it right up against the little pile. It acts as kind of a screen. And trust me, I know the irony of me sitting here hand crushing this up because I own a company where we sell rock crushers, but I thought this would kind of be a fun way to show you guys how to do it on a small scale, and then we'll get it ground up in the pulverizer. All right, we got our stuff crushed up here. Crushed it down to about ½ inch minus, so it'll go in our pulverizer. And that was fun for about 3 minutes, but then I really wish I had a little jaw crusher. But we got it crushed up by hand. Now I'm going to run it through this little pulverizer here. The way this thing works is there's a shaft with a disc here that rotates. This one's stationary. And you feed the material down in the hole here, and it grinds up in the discs, and it's got to come out this little hole. And then for cleaning, you open it up here. And there you can see the discs and how they work. And then this one just turns, driven by that electric motor. So we'll get this thing going, we'll crush it up to powder, and then we'll split it up, and I'll pan half and assay half. Here's our stuff after the pulverizer. And it does a pretty good job. I think it's probably 20 mesh minus. I could probably get the plates a little closer together if I tried real hard. But for this experiment, we're just going to give it a shot and see how it goes. So now let's get it mixed up, and we'll get it weighed and split into 2 fractions. Okay, I got them mixed up and split into 2 here. These each weigh 1 kilogram of ore a piece. So I'm going to take this one, I'm going to pan it out, we'll take a look at that, and then I'm going to take this one and mix up some flux. I'll probably roast it first because there's some sulfides in there, so we'll get it roasted, drive off the sulfur, convert it all to oxides, and then assay this and compare the amount of gold we get from each. Okay, so I got my material, I'm just going to pour it in here. I've got a pan I'm going to pan into. And first step is just to get it all nice and wet. Mixed all around. Make sure it's wet all the way through, which actually will take a little bit of doing here. A lot of people use jet dry. I'm not going to this time. I probably should. You might be able to see some of the sulfides floating on the surface there. Some guys swear by it, and I do think it helps. I don't have any with me right now, but I wanted to kind of take a minute here to talk about how I pan samples, and especially really, really fine hard rock gold. If you're doing placer stuff and you're going after flakes and some larger things, you can be pretty rough with it. Get it all shook down to the bottom and then pan it off real fast. With the hard rock stuff, you got to be a lot kind of more gentle with it, and just wash the stuff off the top. You can see the quartz there, and here's the band of sulfides at the bottom. So I take my pan, and when I start washing material away, I like to bring it down flat, shake it all down to the bottom, and you're essentially just making it a layer cake in there by density. Shake it over to the corner, and you can see I've brought the quartz pretty much all the way up to the lip here. And then I don't shake the pan at all when I'm washing material out of it. I know a lot of plaster guys will shake and use these riffles here on the far edge as kind of like a sluice box as they wash the material out. Whereas I usually get maybe 5 to 10 washes like that, and then I just repeat the process, shake it all back down to the bottom. You want to get it all layered up again, because the density of the gold is so heavy. It goes to the bottom, obviously, but the particles that we're after may be 200 or 300 mesh, and so it may take a long time for them to get down to the bottom, or they get hung up in the sulfides and don't stratify very well. So we just want to be very, very careful with our fine gold, not to lose it or wash it out or agitate it too much. And to start, we're going to get all the quartz off the top we can, and then come back and work down the sulfides. And we're actually going to wash out quite a bit of the sulfides while we're doing this, because we want to just get down to the gold and see how much gold we have. But there's a significant amount of sulfides in this ore that we're going to have to work through. And as I pan down, the sulfides are going to get more and more prevalent. But you'll see as we work, there will always typically be a little bit of quartz that rises to the top, even as we get down real close to the gold. And it just shows you that none of these processes are perfect. And as we keep panning, there's always a little bit of quartz that's hung up down there somewhere, or doesn't get stratified. So we want to make sure we get that stratified as best we can. I see, as an example, there's quite a bit of quartz there and just a little bit of sulfide showing here. So I'm going to pan the quartz off. I bring the water up kind of just to the edge and then wash it back. I'm not agitating, I'm not bumping, I'm not swirling. I'm just letting the water wash in and wash out like the tide. Now we washed it down. It's pretty much mostly sulfides, but now watch as I shake again. Get it all stratified. There's quite a bit of quartz that's going to show back up. And there, I don't know if you can see, but now it's all quartz on top again. So we're just repeating the process over and over again. And the idea is that the gold all ends up down in the bottom of the crease. We lose very, very little. You're always going to lose a little bit. Doesn't matter how good of a panner you are, especially with this hard rock stuff. It's very, very fine. There's going to be some that is going to get lost. But the idea is to minimize it. And so it takes a while. You got to be patient. You can't rush it. And you gotta, get it down to where you can work the gold out. And you can see it's just a process. But we're getting down to a spot now where we're mostly sulfides. We'll take a closer look in the pan here because I want to show you something that typically happens if your sample has some pretty good gold in it. So now we've reduced it pretty much to mostly sulfides. And I'm gonna pan a little bit farther than I would normally do just so I can show you guys what I'm seeing. All right, let me get the camera turned around and see if we can see what I'm looking at here. Now here's our pan, and I've kind of done this artificially so you could see, but you can see a little bit of real fine gold there in the corner. And I want to keep it underwater so it doesn't float away. But if your sample has enough gold in it, you'll start to see the real fine gold at the corners. And that's a good indication that you got a pretty good sample going. But you want to make real sure that you don't lose that stuff. So as it gets to the corners, what I like to do is start showing the corners. So I got to switch hands. I'm not left-handed here. Is as it gets to the corners, I shake it over a little bit to the left and then a little bit to the right and try and concentrate that gold down right in the bottom of the crease. And hopefully on this next swirl, you won't see so much gold in the corners. Yeah, see, hopefully we got most of that gold down in the, there's a little bit there still. You can see it. But let me get it panned down. That's pretty cool. We got some good gold. Looks like a pretty good sample. So let me get this panned down a little bit further and we'll take a look. So I've got our material pretty much panned down. I'm going to try and get our gold in one big pile here. And a little bit of sulfides. I'm just going to very carefully work that down and out of the pan. We don't want to be rough at all. We just want to let the water come in and out. I'm just raising the pan a little bit and dropping it. That's all I'm doing. I'm not doing anything else. There's no wrist action. There's no shaking. There's no bump. There's no nothing. And the idea is the gold gets all stratified when I'm doing this. And then we're just washing off the junk on top. And as we get down here, there's typically some bigger pieces that get in our way, the larger pieces of sulfide. So we want to be careful with those and not wash them out too aggressively. I don't know, can you see the gold in the pan there? I hope you can see the gold in the pan. There it is. Let's see if this works. There we go. There's our little gold trace. Again, from 1 kg. All right, I'm gonna try something that I've actually never heard of before, but we're gonna try it and see if it works. So what I'm gonna do is I've got my sulfides down here and my gold. It's probably half and half, maybe 2/3 sulfides and a little bit of gold. It's all really fine. And what I'm going to do is I've got one of our little cupels or cupels, depending on, somebody tell me how to pronounce that, because I've heard it both ways, cupel and cupel. Let me know what you guys think in the description. But I'm going to take just a little pipette. I'm going to suck all this gold and sulfides out of here. And I'm going to put them right in the bottom of our cupel here, cupel. I don't know if this is going to work, so you really don't want these wet. But I'm going to try and essentially roast and recover the gold with some lead all at the same time. And see if that works. I had some guy tell me that this would work. And now I want to try it. Because we want to get a little gold bead so we can end up getting it weighed or measured. And actually, now that I'm looking at this just looks like a bad idea, but we'll try it. I gotta bring this up to temperature really, really slowly, so it doesn't break or crack. Because the whole point is to keep these things really dry. Okay, there's our little cupel. It's soaking wet now. I'm going to put it in the furnace. I'm going to slowly dry it out, very, very low temperature. And then I'm going to add lead to it and see if the lead will conglomerate onto all the gold and the metal in there. And the sulfides maybe will collect a ring around the top, or maybe they might even oxidize and get absorbed into the cupel. I'm not sure. We'll find out. Okay, I've got it in the propane flame there. There's no air going from the vacuum yet, and I'm just drying it out real slow. We'll let that run for a bit, and then we'll put it in our furnace here and mix some lead in with it and see if we can get a little gold bead. Okay, while that cupel's drying out, we'll get our lead weighed up. Going to use about 50 grams or so. Yeah, about 51. This cupel, I got a little air going to it now. This cupel should be able to absorb about 69, 70 grams of lead, and so this 50 grams should be right about perfect. You can see in there, it's all dried out. The sulfides are all dried out. It looks like they might actually be roasting a little bit there on the right side where they're turning a little bit black. So I'll get them stirred around, and we'll get it put in the furnace here in a minute. Yeah, I cut our lead into two little pieces so it fit in there better. And I'm just going to put it right in the cupel out here, see if I can get the lead melting. I want to make sure there's no bubbling or boiling, or and I can deal with it out here a lot better. So see if I can just get this in the cupel there. There's one piece. There's the second piece. And we'll see if we can get those to melt a little bit here. Looks like our lead's starting to go there a little bit. Kind of squashing down. There's our puddle forming. So we'll get that loaded in the furnace and start driving that lead off. All right, we have our cupel in the furnace, and the lead's melted. It's come up to temperature, and what's happening here is the lead melts at about 600 degrees Fahrenheit, and the surface of the liquid lead starts to oxidize, but the lead oxides don't actually melt until about 1700 degrees, and once they become molten, they shed off the liquid bead of lead and are absorbed by the cupel like a sponge, but the cupel doesn't actually absorb the lead metal, which leaves a precious metal button. Okay, there's our nice little gold bead from our panning. So this is the panning cons. It's actually the stuff that I put the sulfides in, and the sulfides went away. I don't know what happened. My theory is they oxidized, got absorbed by the lead oxide, and were absorbed into the cupel. But I've never heard of anybody doing that before. So that's kind of a cool little discovery, I guess. So we'll pull our little gold bead out of there and see if we can get a weight on it. It's pretty small, but we might be able to get it weighed. Here's our little gold bead from our panning cons. And it weighs 0.1 grams. Oh, when the wind's not blowing on it, it weighs 0.1. All right, so now here's the beauty of the metric system. 0.1 grams in 1 kilogram. So if you multiply that by 1,000, we get 100 grams. So the panning cons gave us a result of about 100 grams per ton. So that's a pretty sweet little sample.